celebrating 10 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Mark Smothers and Suzanne Lindsay.
Welcome to another edition of Anything is Possible. I'd like to introduce Suzanne Lindsay and Mark Smothers from Buddys BBQ. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
What is your relation?
This is my oldest brother, Mark.
It's my sister,
All right.
Suzanne.
All right, so I would love for you to do this. I love it when I have siblings on the show because I love for the siblings to describe the siblings. So would you give me your summary of your sister?
Sure.
Oh, no. This will certainly be a moment to remember.
My sister is a big part of Buddys BBQ. She's our voice. She does all our radio commercials, and she does all our ads. She keeps us out in the public eye, keeps her name out there. She's a great marketing director.
How'd she get picked to do that, though? What is it about her?
Okay. When my dad, passed away, he was our PR guy. He did it all. I didn't do that. I'm behind the scenes kind of guy. She took his place, and she became our PR person.
What one word best describes Suzanne Lindsay?
Well, very faithful.
Oh, that's so sweet.
She's got a great personality, and she's a great sister.
All right. Would you please describe for me this gentleman known as Mark Smothers?
Well, he is the man behind the scenes, but he is, as far as the business goes, he is president of Buddys BBQ, and he's our financial guru. Thank God, because he's the only one in the family that has that gift. So he does a great job. He really does. And kind of the visionary behind Buddys BBQ. He really is. And just kind of he's got all the experience from way back when, which I think has made a big difference. And that's why Dad felt so confident to turn the business over to him. But besides that, he is a great brother. And, after Dad died, Mark, he's the one that we turn to, that we depend on, that we rely on.
Let's start your story today with the passing of your father. Buddys BBQ is such a great part of our community. I mean, you guys have got a great chain of restaurants, but it's a great part of our community.
It is.
Tell me about your dad, and I would love to see your dad through two lenses. I'd like to see it through the Suzanne lens and the Mark lens. So let me start with you. Tell me about your dad.
Wow. Just the greatest man ever, the greatest father, the greatest husband. It was just such a privilege to grow up in a home with two parents that loved each other as deeply as they did. Just to watch them together, just the way they looked at each other, the way they touched, the way they talked. And we grew up in a great Christian home. I think I shared with you before the story about he made a promise to my mom's dad, to my grandfather, who was a Southern Baptist minister, that he would keep her in church, that he'd be faithful and would take her to church every Sunday or whenever the doors were open. He would be there. And my father did not grow up in a Christian home, so that was a huge commitment on his part to promise that he would love her and cherish her, and that he would make sure that her Christian faith would continue with their commitment to each other and their family. And that's exactly what he did. On their honeymoon, they got married on a Saturday. They just went to the Justice of the Peace and got married. And on Sunday, he had her in church. So already this was a very faithful man who kept his word. And he was, that's just such a blessing to grow up in a home like that.
So the word you used to describe your dad was wow. Yeah. And then you didn't describe your dad, the businessman. You described the way he loved your mother.
Right. But it all carries over into business as well.
Right.
He was a wonderful people person. He loved people, and he loved the fact that God had blessed him so that he and Mother took this leap of faith as far as this business, and
Right.
that they were successful, and that he wanted to be able to share that with others. He felt so.
Your daddy's girl?
Oh, absolutely,
A
absolutely.
little bit spoiled?
Oh my goodness, I just had him wrapped. I can just tell you, and it was wonderful. It was
All right,
wonderful.
so would you please allow me to see your dad through the Mark lens?
Okay. Growing up, Dad was always a man of his word. If he told you something, that was the gospel.
That's right.
He would shake your hand and say, hey, I'm going to take care of you for 10 years. And he would take care of you for 10 years. He was that kind of man. And I learned from that. Business-wise, I kind of started when he kind of started. But I was very young,
How old were you?
probably 12.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I was 10.
And but business-wise, he treated me as a partner
At 12.
at 12. Yeah.
Let me break and tell you a quick story. I'm going to tell you a quick story because this is significant to me because I loved it. I love the dynamics of a great family business. I was sitting here with Kevin Clayton, Jim Clayton's son. Jim Clayton bought a plane to fly between his different mobile home dealerships and his factories and whatever. And he would take Kevin with him. And so that he could get sleep, he taught Kevin at 8 or 9 how to fly the plane. And he would put the controls in his hands, right? And he let him fly at that age. And Kevin told me, he said, you don't know what it does when your father trusts you like that and he treats you like that. And when you said he treated you as a partner at 12, that's what struck me. So continue.
Well, that continued on throughout, many years. We were partners in the business. Now, not financial partners,
Right.
but he treated me like a partner. And that's how I really got into the business and learned all the financial parts of it and, how to do food costs, how to do, all aspects of the business. And until the day he died, I was still his partner and best friend. Now, on the golf course, he treated me like a son.
Let's take a break right here. Suzanne Lindsay, Mark Smothers from Buddys BBQ. They're my guest on Anything Is Possible. We're already off to a great, I can smell the barbecue right now. We're already off to a great start. We'll be back with more in a moment.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up,
I lost my safety net, but I still had him in my heart, and I remembered everything he taught me. And I still use those principles today.
If you've ever been to Buddys BBQ, then you know of my guests. You may not know them, but today you will get to know them. Suzanne Lindsay and Mark Smothers. Welcome.
Thank you.
So we were talking about your dad, and I got to see your dad through Daddy's Little Girls lens.
Right.
And then when you worked with him, you were his partner. When you played golf with him, you were his son.
Oh, yes.
Let me show you something. When your father passed away, walk me up to your father passing away and then passing the business on to his family, because that had to be tough.
Well, in 1990, he was diagnosed with melanoma cancer, and he was told then, 2 years. And of course, my mother didn't believe it, and he didn't believe it. He was like, I can beat this thing, and Mother was like, I know we can beat this thing together. We've beat everything together, and they really, truly believed it. Unfortunately, we were very naive when it comes to cancer, very naive when it comes to melanoma cancer, that it is a cancer that must be caught very early to survive it. And they were accurate, I'm afraid. It was almost 2 years to the day that he died of the melanoma cancer. And, it was devastating. It was devastating to my mother, devastating to our family, to the business. We really didn't even know how to move forward. And I think Mark can kind of walk you through the business aspect of that. But we were really worried about my mom, who struggled with it so much, because they had been such a team, such
Right.
partners in life and in business, and it was just very difficult for her. So we were really trying to really support her and help her through it.
Having lost both my parents, I kind of have a sense of what every loss is like a fingerprint. It's unique. So
Right.
you can't know a person's pain, but you can certainly know what it likes to feel lost.
Right.
And when I mentioned your father's death, you see what happened to the energy in the room? You came here like you were holding on for dear life, and I'm kind of watching your brother, and I could see you kind of working through your paces. And even to this day, it's difficult because
it's very
you're
difficult.
daddy's girl, and you lost your partner and best friend. And I don't know, and you'll have to help me with this, but it's one thing if your parents are your parents, but when you work alongside them in business
Right.
and you've grown something together, I think there's an extra layer of intimacy because you see it up close, right? So talk to me about how it affected and shaped you.
Of course, like Suzanne said, he passed away in December of '92. Well, actually, 3 years before that, he was kind of letting me run things because he had appointments every day at Holston Hills Country Club. And
He had other things to do.
he was priming me to take over at that time. But, you know, I didn't have any idea it was going to be that fast.
Right.
And, of course, when it got close to him, he knew he didn't have long. And he talked to me a little bit. He said, I have all the confidence in the world that you'll do fine. Take care of your mom and take care of this business. And I promised him I would. And from that day forward, that's what I've done.
Yes.
And it was scary. I was scared. But I used to have him as a soundboard. If I had to make a real tough decision that I was not quite sure about, I could always ask Dad. I said, hey, help me out here. What would you do? And of course he'd tell me and we'd work it out. But after 1992, I didn't have him anymore.
Isn't there a moment though where when my dad died, what I realized was I always saw his cape. I never saw his kryptonite. And then when I saw him succumb, I too had that same notion of, wait a minute, I had a backstop. You know, I could, you know, it's like being in the pool, and if you can see the side of the pool, or if you can see a lifeguard in the chair, you know,
You're okay.
and then you realize. But then there came a point with me where I was like, I don't have him anymore, and I was visiting a friend's mother's 90th birthday party. And as I was leaving the birthday party, I walked past the mirror on the way out of this clubhouse, and I saw my father. I was walking exactly like him. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, I literally saw him. And I got in the car, and I think I called my sister, and I said something to her, and then she said something back, and I chuckled, and she said, that's the way Daddy used to laugh.
Oh.
And you realize after a moment, yeah, you do have him with you. He's just in you. Does that make sense? Do you
Sure.
find yourself as you're leading the organization now, you draw on where you might have looked outside to figure out what he would have done? You're just you're drawing it from within because he put it in you.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
I lost my safety net, but I still had him in my heart, and I remembered everything he taught me. And I still use those principles today.
Work me through some of the principles that he taught you.
Well, customers are always right. I don't care
Absolutely.
what the
What the situation,
situation is. Customers, Dad says customers are always right. If they want something done, you do it. You make them happy.
Hold on right there, because I want to make sure we get these, because I want to do two things when we come back. One, I want you guys to walk me through the principles by which your dad and your mother built this. And I've been kind of working the story backwards because this all starts at a drive-in.
Yes,
And it was really your mother's
that's right.
launch point. So wait until you hear the rest of this story. Sorry, Paul Harvey. The rest of this story. This is Anything is Possible. We'll be right back.
Coming up,
I thought, my dad would love this, that the whole purpose of the Buddys Race Against Cancer is to help other people.
These folks make people happy in Knoxville. From Buddys BBQ, Suzanne Lindsay and Mark Smothers, thank you for joining us today. So we were going through what your dad taught you, because you live out of that now.
I sure did.
You know what's neat about the principles that our parents teach us? The thing that I think is so neat is when you test them yourself and you find out they work.
Absolutely.
So we started with the customer is always right.
The next thing was employees, how to treat employees. Dad says, always treat employees like you would like to be treated yourself. And that's what we've always done. We take very good care of our employees, and we have some of the best employees ever.
Customer's always right. Treat your employees well. We haven't even got the food yet. You got to get.
Those were his two big deals.
Really?
That was it. He wanted you to do those two first. Of course, he wanted a good product at a very fair price. And we still do that today. We just haven't changed anything.
40 years.
40 years.
40
All right,
years.
so when did it become Buddys BBQ?
Well, actually, it started with a barbecue place on Chapman Highway, and it was called Bob Sykes. It's a franchise out of Alabama.
Wow.
And we had a partner, uncle partner, and we ran that a couple of years, and then they agreed to disagree, and Dad went to Pigeon Forge, opened a barbecue place there called the Barbecue House. Stayed there 2 or 3 years. Let an uncle have that one. And then we went to Clinton Highway. It was an old fish and chips place. Converted into a Buddys BBQ. And a couple of years, Dad found this location on Kingston Pike.
Wow.
And it already had some barbecue pits already built there. I don't know if you've ever heard of Sarge's Barbecue.
Yeah.
Okay, he's the one that built those pits.
Sarge Jackson.
That's it. And
Yeah.
they had it, and we leased that building. And that's where Buddys BBQ really, really began.
Was born.
Wow.
In 1972.
Now, here's one of the things, though, that I think is remarkable about your story is, after losing your father, what you guys have done in the fight against cancer.
Oh.
And before we get away, I want to talk about Buddys Race and talk about how you've kind of taken his life. I see him in you right now. I mean, just but talk to me about what you guys decided to do in the fight against cancer.
Suzanne is the one that needs to talk about that, because she's the one that really spearheaded that project and really
You
got
have other
going.
cancer survivors in the family too, correct?
My brother Mark was diagnosed with leukemia in the year 2000. So he's a 12-year
12 years old.
cancer survivor. It was touch and go. It was very tough, but he survived, and so we.
That had to scare the.
Oh my goodness, we couldn't believe. Once you've been through it.
Because
My
your
dad, now me,
Yeah, exactly. And my mother just was like, it can't happen again. It can't happen again. And of course, unfortunately, it does happen time and time in families. And I remember talking to Mother and saying, "Now, Mom, look, Mark needs you. You're going to have to be strong for him. You can't go in there and start crying and, fall apart. You've got to be strong." And she said, "You don't have to worry. I'll be strong for Mark." And she was. Mm-hmm. She was very strong and very supportive and, helped get him through it. We all did. We all were there for him and loved on him and prayed for him and did anything we could to help him through that process. But it was tough. It was very tough. So the Buddys Race Against Cancer all of a sudden had a whole new meaning for us. It wasn't just honoring the memory of our dad. It was celebrating the life of Mark. Yeah.
What are you feeling right now?
A lot of different emotions. I don't know if I want to cry or laugh, you know.
What did your dad do?
My dad,
Yeah.
Oh, he'd be so proud.
he'd probably be proud. He probably wouldn't cry, you know. He would be tough.
I think, you know, just sitting here with you guys today and just watching his life come through you is remarkable, because I wanted to do the story backwards, because, I mean, really, it's been great having you guys on the show, but it's been even better having your dad on the show.
Yeah, really.
You know?
Yeah.
And from building a business from scratch, taking a little drive in and going through the ups and downs, to fighting cancer yourself, to fighting cancer for everybody else, to sitting here today, that's just a wonderful thing. But then to turn around and repurpose your pain and try to help somebody else, that's an incredible thing. And that's just what he would do. That's what he would have
It's
done.
exactly what he would have done.
Yeah.
So when I was approached about the race, you know, and I thought, what a great healing process for us would be to go through that process of honoring his memory. And then I thought, you know, my dad would love this, that the whole purpose of the Buddys Race Against Cancer is to help other people. You know, it's not really about my dad or about Mark or about all those other people that come to the event. It's really about that money that's raised goes to help people at the Thompson Cancer Survival Center's outreach services. You know,
Wow.
well over $4 million raised to help people who just can't afford life-saving cancer screenings and education. And my dad would love that. It would mean so much to him.
Yeah, if you brought the idea to your dad, it seems to me he would say, "We can do this."
We can do it.
Mark Smothers, Suzanne Lindsay, thank you
you
for coming by today. Just a blessing to be here.
Thank you.
Wow, now I want some barbecue.
We hope
Thanks
so.
for honoring
got
our
some-
dad.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I
thank
really
you.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Great memories.
yeah. I was honoring our dads.
Good. That's good.
Because I really do understand how you feel. We'll see you next time.